Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Becky if you're new, and today we are going to be making 5 viral dinners. Not today, but right now I'm going to make 1 dinner, but total we're going to make 5. I don't know about you, but I have on Instagram a whole bunch of recipes that I have saved over the years where I see a really delicious looking recipe, I save it, and then it goes there to die in my archives. I've got that on Pinterest, I have that on Instagram, and I thought, you know what? Let's go ahead and start making some of those recipes. So that is what we are going to do today. The first thing we are going to make is baked rosemary chicken meatballs with sun-dried tomato orzo creamy pasta. And so the first thing I need to do is get a shallot sliced. We're gonna make the meatballs first because the orzo is gonna come together really quickly. And I want to have the meatballs baking in the oven while we get the orzo cooking on the stove. We need shallots for the orzo pasta and for the meatballs. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get 2 sliced up now while I'm at it. So I don't know if you're anything like me and you have a ton of recipes saved and then life happens and you never get around to making them. So this is your sign. Let's try some new recipes out, and that's what we're gonna do tonight. And I happen to have all the ingredients for the majority of these recipes I want to make. For our meatballs, we also need a little bit of thyme and fresh parsley. So I just ran out into the garden and grabbed the parsley and thyme. Not thyme, rosemary. We've now had many frost. We had a day of snow. If you can believe that, I can't believe it. That's pretty rare for us at this point. And the fresh herbs in the garden are still going strong. So I'm super happy about that. I do want to mention I will link all these recipes in the description box with timestamps of each recipe so you can jump to each individual recipe if you want to. So I'm going to use half of these shallots in the meatballs and the other half in the orzo. I'm going to use this recipe as inspiration. I'm going to follow it pretty well, but I'm not going to follow it exactly. For example, it calls for 1.5 pounds of ground chicken. Well, the ground chicken that I found at my store came in 1-pound packages, and I don't know what I would do with 1/2 pound. So I'm going to go ahead and just make 2 pounds worth. And it also calls for sun-dried tomatoes in the meatballs and in the pasta. Well, I don't have enough for both, so I'm going to use my sun-dried tomatoes for the pasta. So here I just added breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese, garlic powder. Now I'm gonna add pepper. I also added red pepper flake, salt, a little bit of olive oil because this is a little bit drier because it is ground chicken. And that is everything. I'm gonna mix this up. I also have the oven preheated to 450 degrees. So the one thing I'm not adding to this is the sun-dried tomatoes. I have a cookie sheet here with some parchment paper and a 2-tablespoon cookie scoop, and we're going to just make meatballs just like this, and I think I can pack them pretty tight, and so I'm not going to need to roll them later. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll each meatball. Now that all of our meatballs are shaped, I'm just going to put a little bit of avocado spray on the top so that they brown up nicely. And we will get our meatballs in the oven. They smell absolutely incredible. And while those are cooking, we are gonna start on our orzo. This orzo should come together faster than it takes for our meatballs to cook. So in this pan, when you're cooking something like this, because we're gonna cook our orzo and make our sauce all in this pan, you wanna make sure you have one with the lid. And the first thing I'm gonna add is actually some of the oil from the sun-dried tomato jar. Oh my goodness, that smells incredible. And then to this, I'm gonna add some butter and a sprig of rosemary. We are going to kind of pan fry this rosemary in the butter and the oil. And then I've got my sun-dried tomatoes here, and let me see. I was gonna cut them, let me drain them and dice them. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this sprig of rosemary, and I'm gonna add some homemade tomato paste in here that I froze in little pucks, and we're gonna have that melt and cook. I'm gonna sprinkle in some red pepper flake. I have not salted this yet. I'm gonna add garlic, pepper, gonna add some white wine. I've got Orzo pasta, chicken broth, once this comes up to a full simmer, I'm going to turn the heat down and put the lid on, and we're gonna let it simmer until the pasta is completely cooked through. It's looking and smelling incredible. Our orzo is almost done, so we're gonna finish it with some cream. I'm gonna mix that in. And then our meatballs are ready to come out of the oven. I'm gonna let this reduce a little bit more. Looks like it's sticking a little bit. Our meatballs are looking fantastic. You look at the color we got on the top of those meatballs. Absolutely delicious. I did turn the heat up a little bit because I want the sauce to reduce down. And then I've got some spinach here we're gonna add. I like to put these washed containers of spinach that are fresh from the store directly in the freezer. This will cook down to nothing. I'm also gonna sprinkle in a good amount of Parmesan cheese. And this dinner is almost done. I'm gonna taste it for seasonings. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more spinach to this. Just because spinach cooks down to nothing. And this flavors were perfect. The salt, the pepper, I don't need to add any more of that. So once this wilts down, dinner is ready. I'm gonna pop this back in the freezer. There's our meatballs. I think we can serve up dinner and give this a taste test with the meatballs and the orzo all together. To say I am excited to try this would be an understatement. It smells incredible. I'm gonna break into the meatball and see what that looks like on the inside. Oh, it does not look dry at all. That can sometimes be the little bit of a worry when cooking with, let's see what that looks like on the inside, ground chicken, which I don't do very often. I think what I'm gonna do is try the meatball and the orzo together, because that is how the recipe is intended, to have the meatballs served on top of the orzo. For this coming together in less than 20 minutes and having to make all the components, this has extreme depth of flavor. I think the one thing I would maybe do a little bit different, even though It's in the name, rosemary, chicken, and orzo meatballs. I think instead of using rosemary in both the orzo and the meatballs, I'd probably use basil. This, excuse you, the dog is counter surfing. This is incredible though, absolutely delicious. I'm loving orzo as an easy stovetop dinner and then throw the vegetable inside it. You could throw even more spinach in it. You could throw peas in it. So delicious. I am going to dish up Josh's and I will see you next time we are making a viral recipe. I am so excited about this next meal. The next two dinners actually are recipes or dinners that I make all the time. This one we're gonna be making now is white enchiladas. And I make enchiladas all the time, but I usually make green enchiladas or red enchiladas. And I saw a recipe for white enchiladas. And I think that this hopefully is gonna be a delicious twist on something I know Josh and I love. Plus I have some garden tomatoes still, if you can believe that, the end of November, they're ripe and they need to be used up. So we're gonna make enchiladas with pico from the garden. So I've got cream cheese in this bowl, 1 can of diced chilies. We're gonna get this in here. So we're gonna make the filling first, and this is gonna come together in minutes because I have some leftover roast chicken here. This would be a perfect menu to use a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store. We're gonna make a white sauce to go on top, but first we are going to make our enchiladas. I'm gonna follow the recipe exactly like it says. This is Monterey Jack cheese, and I've got an 8-ounce block, and I'm gonna go ahead and shred the whole thing. Half of this cheese is going to be for the filling, and then half of it is going to be for the white sauce. Now I'm going to add about the equivalent of half a packet of taco seasoning. This is homemade, but the recipe calls for half a bag of taco seasoning. This is all we need for the filling. So once we get this mixed up, we are halfway done with this recipe, if you can believe that. I have the oven preheating to 350 degrees because we are gonna bake these enchiladas in the oven. And now we're just gonna take our filling mixture, which again took me 3 minutes to put together. I've got some flour tortillas here. I like flour tortillas. I'm sure you could use whatever kind of tortillas your family prefers, whether it's flour or corn. And we're just gonna kind of spread this mixture, roll up the tortillas, and I'm gonna go ahead and bake these enchiladas in this pan here. One of my new favorite things to make as a freezer meal is actually just to freeze the burrito portion of enchiladas right here without any sauce on it. You can pull them out of the freezer, open a jar of red or green sauce, and you can bake them from frozen. Just pour a little sauce on the bottom of your pan, put the frozen burritos in, and then top with sauce and maybe a little cheese. Bake. Absolutely delicious and super fast and convenient. Now we're gonna make the white sauce to go on top of our enchiladas, and I need to grab some butter and some flour. This recipe would come together really quickly after, say, Thanksgiving, if you had some turkey and you wanted kind of a creative way to use up turkey. This sauce right here is why this recipe is unique, and I've never made it because I've never made kind of like a bechamel or cream of chicken almost that we are going to pour over our burritos. So we're gonna melt our butter. Now we're gonna add our flour, and we're gonna cook this for just a minute. Once the flour is cooked for a couple minutes, we're gonna add our chicken broth. And we're gonna cook this until we've got a creamy sauce and it starts to thicken up and that flour dissolves. I just remembered the taco seasoning I make, I don't add salt, and I'm assuming most store-bought taco seasonings have a little bit of salt. So I'm gonna go ahead and season this because I did not season the filling. The roast chicken has salt on it, but this will just make sure the whole dish is nice and flavored. If you've ever wondered how to make cream of chicken soup from scratch, this is exactly how you make it. Flour, butter, and chicken broth. But we're gonna take this basically homemade cream of chicken and turn it into our white enchilada sauce. So I just added in some sour cream. I'm gonna get that mixed in. I'm gonna turn the heat down because it's nice and thick and rich and I don't want it to burn. Now we're gonna add our cheese that we shredded earlier and we're gonna mix this together until it's all melted and smooth. Oh my goodness, friend, I just tasted this white sauce and it is so delicious. I'm excited for this recipe. So we're just gonna pour this over our enchiladas. And this dish barely fits it all. Normally I would put half the sauce on the bottom, but this recipe did not call to do that. And we're gonna get this all in here. I'm gonna kind of shake it a little bit to work it in between those burritos. And then it doesn't say to put any cheese on the top. This is it just like this. I need to scrape out my bowl. Normally after I would make the burrito part, I would just open a jar of enchilada sauce, red or green, but this is definitely a unique way to make enchiladas. So I'm gonna get this in the oven for about 30 minutes until it's all ooey gooey and bubbly and hopefully browned on the top. While that's cooking, I'm gonna make some pico with these tomatoes that I harvested back in, I think it was late August. I harvested them when they were completely green and they've been sitting downstairs just ripening and now they're perfect. And so we're gonna turn this into pico. I need to go harvest some cilantro from the garden, and for the chicken pot pie that we're making next, I need to get some herbs in the garden for that as well. To top our enchiladas with, I went ahead and just diced up 2 small onions and some tomatoes and the cilantro, lemon juice, salt, and pepper, and that will be our little pico to go on top of our enchiladas. I think our enchiladas are done. They're bubbly and golden and looking fantastic. Oh my goodness, I think we are gonna so enjoy this. Look at that. So to go ahead and top our enchiladas, I've just got some fresh cilantro I'm just gonna put on the top just so that there's something nice and green to contrast. Now it's time to give this a taste test. This looks fantastic. So I'm gonna just taste it without adding any toppings. I have a bunch of different toppings that Josh and I can customize our enchilada how we want to. But look at that, creamy. Orbit, do you think you're getting some enchilada? Wow. That is so good. It's so different than any typical enchilada I ever make. And this, I think, could definitely become a family favorite. It was super easy. And what I've got to serve it with, let me show you. Some homemade hot sauce and pickled carrots. These are some of my favorite things I made out of the garden. We'll top it with pico de gallo. I am so excited to have this in my recipe rotation now. Friend, I am so excited about this next recipe. We are making chicken pot pie. And I know that's a really common dish, but I never make chicken pot pie with pie crust. I usually make the chicken pot pie filling and then I put biscuits on the top. But I saw a chicken pot pie video and I'm getting inspired to make things in a way I don't usually do it. And I think this one's gonna turn out delicious. So I need to cook some chicken. So I'm gonna melt some butter, and we're gonna use this butter to not only cook the chicken, but also to make the roux, the white sauce we need to thicken our pie. So we're gonna go ahead and I have 2 chicken breasts in here, and we're gonna get this cooked with the butter. And while the chicken's cooking, I can go ahead and get the vegetables prepped. So we've got some carrots from the garden that need to be washed and peeled, some onions, celery, garlic, and some herbs. I happen to have some pie crust in my freezer. I really like to keep homemade pie crust in the freezer, but if you don't have that and you happen to have some store-bought pie crust in the freezer, pull those out. I find making chicken pot pie and then putting the biscuits on the top is easy. And so I don't normally make chicken pot pie because I don't usually think to pull out pie crust. So I'm really excited about trying this recipe. It looks fantastic. So I'm just gonna peel these 2 carrots. They're pretty thick carrots from the garden. And then I'm gonna go wash them, and then we can go ahead and chop the rest of these goodies. In the time it took for my chicken to cook, I was able to get my vegetables prepped. So we're gonna get these vegetables right into this pot. And I still need to roll out the pie crust. So this is gonna be a perfect time to roll the pie crust out while the carrots and celery and onions cook and become nice and tender. I think I'm gonna turn the heat down just a little bit. I'm also gonna go ahead and add a little bit of salt because I haven't seasoned any of this yet. I'll add my garlic and herbs once this becomes a little bit more tender. Once the onions start to release a little bit of their liquid and moisture, we can use that to scrape up any of the fond on the bottom of the pan. When I was chopping my vegetables, it had me thinking, I don't think I've ever actually made a chicken pot pie before. I think this is the first time I'm ever making a true chicken pot pie. My mother-in-law makes a delicious chicken pot pie. So if I can get it about halfway as good as hers, then I will be happy. My goal is to try to get this chicken pot pie to set. So when I cut into it, I've got a nice pie slice. And the key there is to get the ratio of flour and liquid mixture right so that it's not too runny once it sets. I did grab my deepest dish pie pan I have so that hopefully it fits all the filling we're making. I'm just gonna roll this pie crust out like I would a pie or a crust for a pie, a fruit pie. I think that's about good. Yep. So I'm gonna get this crust in here. I'm gonna pop this back in the fridge so this stays nice and cold until our filling is done. While this is in the fridge, I will roll out this crust because the vegetables have a few more minutes in the oven before they're done. Lay it over the top and pop both of these back in the fridge until we're ready to fill this pie. The veggies are nice and tender. I do want to add some frozen peas. I don't like to add those until the end because I don't like them getting overcooked. 1 cup is probably good. And to that, I'm going to sprinkle in our flour and we're going to let all of that cook together. Oh, you know what I forgot? That's okay. I almost forgot our parsley, our thyme, and the garlic. We'll just let that all cook with the flour. Mix that together. Now we're gonna add our liquid ingredients, which is 1 cup of cream and 2 cups of broth. And I am measuring this because I wanna make sure I don't add too much liquid, so that we have a nice cream sauce that thickens up. Now we're going to stir this and just let it thicken up on the stove, and then we can get it into our pie shell. I think this is a good thickness. I tasted it for seasonings and I adjusted the salt and pepper as needed. I want to bake this pot pie on a cookie sheet with parchment in case it boils over. So we're just going to go ahead and make it on this parchment. I have the oven preheated to 400 degrees. And it looks like that was the perfect amount of filling for this pie. Just got my fingers just a little bit damp so that we can seal the edges really well. Now we're gonna put our top crust on our bottom crust. Pinch this together. And try to do a new technique that I don't normally do, but I watched a video on it. Well, it's not working. Just go to my tried and true. I need to work quick because the hot filling is starting to melt my butter, which I don't want. I didn't even think about that. Into the oven it goes. One thing when you're baking pies or any pastry of any kind, one rule I know is you want to keep that butter as cold as possible. And I didn't really think about that as I was messing around with the pie crust. So I'm hoping that the pastry comes out nice and flaky because it was starting to melt my butter. I didn't fully read the recipe, and now I'm thinking maybe I should have chilled the filling or cooled it at least before I put it in the pie shell. It's too late now. We will see how it turns out. Moment of truth here. It looks like we cooked it perfectly. The bottom crust is nice and golden brown, but we're gonna cut into it and see and give it a taste test. I think the first piece is always a little difficult to get out. Not too bad. If it tastes anything like it smells, we will have a winner here. I'm really excited. You can smell the butter because this is an all butter pie crust. I can smell all the herbs and the chicken and the veggies. That looks so good. I think that's gonna be too big of a bite. So delicious. I think I'm gonna be making some chicken pot pie more regularly now because this was very easy and super comforting. It tastes like a hug in a bowl on, especially tonight. I think it's supposed to get in the low 30s. This is the perfect dinner for tonight. I'm so excited to dig in. Hello friend, welcome back. We are making dinner and dessert today. So on this oven, I'm gonna go ahead and preheat the oven to 400, I think 425. This first recipe is an adaptation, of the viral feta and tomato pasta that you make in the oven. And I'm really excited to try this adaptation because Josh and I love the original, and I think this adaptation is going to be even better because we are going to use Boursin cheese, and I like Boursin cheese better than I like feta cheese. And then the other recipe, we're going to make dessert as well. And the dessert recipe we're going to make is an almond cake. So we're doing dinner and dessert today, and I'm really excited. So I'm going to go ahead and get the pasta sauce started first. So what I'm going to do is take 1 cube or round cylinder of the chive, which one is this? Garlic and fine herb. This stuff is incredible. If you've never tried it, it is so delicious. We're gonna go ahead and get that right in the center of our pan. And then to that, I'm gonna add 1 whole head of garlic that I just cut in half, cherry tomatoes from the garden that are frozen, I did wash these before I put them in the freezer. The original recipe doesn't call for onion, but I had this little onion that was already peeled in my fridge. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this. I think this will add nice flavor. Josh and I love onion. I'm gonna take the onion and just sprinkle it around. I'm gonna take some garlic infused olive oil and put it all over the top. Season this with salt. I'm gonna go ahead and mix all this together. I froze cherry tomatoes whole like this for applications exactly like this. So my oven is still preheating, but I'm gonna go ahead and get this in the oven and let this bake for a good 35 to 40 minutes. Now that we have dinner in the oven, let's go ahead and get this oven preheated to 350 for our almond cake. This cake is gonna come together so incredibly quickly. I just cut a piece of parchment paper to fit the bottom of my springform cake pan. We're gonna go ahead and grease the whole thing. I'm gonna set this aside. For the lemon cake, we are gonna separate 4 eggs. Oop, I wanted the whites actually in this bowl. So we're gonna put 4 egg whites in our stand mixer. Get that in there. Our yolks are gonna go in here. We're gonna use both parts of the egg, but we're gonna use them separately. We're gonna use the whisk attachment to whisk these egg whites until they're light and fluffy. That only took a minute or 2, and we've got this beautiful egg white mixture. This cake does not have any chemical leavening agents in it, so it doesn't have any baking powder or baking soda or anything like that. We're gonna get all the lift from the cake from these egg whites. So I'm gonna get these egg whites into this bowl just because I need the stand mixer again. If you had a hand mixer, you could do the next part in a hand mixer, but I don't have one of those. So we're gonna put our egg whites here, and now back into our stand mixer, I'm gonna take my egg yolks, and I'm gonna get my egg yolks in the stand mixer, along with a 1/2 cup of sugar. And now we're gonna whisk this together for 3 minutes on high. So that looks absolutely beautiful to me. Look how fluffy that is. I have 1 lemon here that I'm gonna zest into the egg whites. I did wash my lemon because I wanna make sure it's nice and clean. To our egg yolk mixture, we're gonna add 1.5 cups of almond flour. So this is a gluten-free recipe. If you're gluten-free, this might be a really good recipe for you. I'm gonna fold this into our egg yolk mixture, trying to keep as much air in there as possible. I'm also gonna add a little bit of salt. Once I have the flour mixed into the egg yolk mixture, then we can fold this mixture into our egg white mixture. We're gonna do this in sections so as not to completely deflate our egg whites. Here I have my springform pan with a little bit of parchment paper on the inside, and we can transfer our cake batter into our springform pan. Now we're gonna take our cake and put it into a preheated oven, and we're gonna bake this for about 35 minutes. If you have, which I don't but the recipe calls for it, Slivered almonds, you want to sprinkle those on now. I don't have those. I think those would be delicious. I think they would add a nice crunch, but I don't have any. I don't think. Let me check. No slivered almonds to be found in my house. Josh, I think, will actually prefer it without the almonds because it'll be all soft, and he doesn't always love the crunch that nuts bring to desserts. So this is going to be absolutely delicious. I think it's going to be a super simple cake that with a cup of coffee after dinner. Yum. Our pasta sauce is almost done, so I'm going to get some water on to boil. This smells incredible, and we are ready to take it out. Oh my goodness, look at that. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to blend it. I think so. But before I blend it, I need to get the garlic cloves out of the paper. They're tender and smell incredible. If I just push on this, they'll start to come out. It's so hot. I'm going to use my high-powered blender so that we can get a really smooth sauce, since those cherry tomatoes have their skin still on them. I think our cake is done. Oh my goodness, that looks beautiful. It's got a nice golden color to it, a light lemony smell. So we're gonna let this cool. I think I'm gonna get it on a cooling rack. I'm gonna try to remove the cake from the springform pan. I'm just gonna run a knife along the edge. Just kind of try to break that seal. I think we've got it now. There we go. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. And we're just gonna let that continue to cool, and then I'll decorate it with some powdered sugar. I think our noodles are done. Let me taste one to check. I'm gonna turn this stove off. This stove I just turned on. I'm okay with a little bit of my water from the pasta going into the sauce to kind of thin it out a little bit. That's why I'm not taking it to the stove or to the sink to strain it. I think that's the last. This is a whole wheat pasta. And I think that, yes, that amount of water that ended up in there I think is perfect. We're gonna stir all this in and try to get that pasta sauce in the circle part of the noodle. I totally forgot. I was supposed to add some spinach to this, which I have, but Josh has been cleaning out the garage all day and he's hungry. So I think I'm just gonna serve it up like this because my spinach is frozen. But I'm gonna give this a taste test and see if it needs any adjusting. Let me make sure the stove is off. Okay, stove's off, oven's off. Let's give this a try. That is incredible. That is one of the best pasta sauces I have made in a long time. And it was incredibly easy. You can taste the garlic, but it's not like hit you in the face garlic because the garlic had time to kind of roast and sweeten and mellow out. The tomato flavor is extraordinary and the cheese flavor is coming through so strong. You would think there was Parmesan cheese in here because it's so rich. So good. You would think there's cream in here too, but you saw what went into it. I'm gonna call Josh in and we're gonna have a wonderful dinner. Friend, that pasta sauce, incredible. Go do yourself a favor and make it. Josh just brewed a pot of coffee. We are gonna go enjoy a slice of cake and some coffee, but first I wanna give it a taste test with you. Oh, I wanted to sprinkle it with a little powdered sugar. I couldn't find my small sieve, so I've got this. That's working pretty good. Get that on there. And let's go ahead and cut into this cake and give this cake a try. You could easily take this cake off and put this onto a cake plate because of the parchment paper, but that is what it's looking like on the inside. It looks super delicious. This is the first time I've ever cooked a cake without a leavening agent, and I think it's cooked correctly. Let's give this a try. Oh my goodness. That is so tender. It's not dry at all, not overly sweet, and hardly, it's just like this kiss of lemon. If you don't like lemon desserts, you would still probably really like this because it is very mild. You could, I'm sure, flavor this with, skip the lemon zest and add almond extract and a little bit of lemon extract, and that would be really good too. This is so delicious. Okay, I'm gonna set that down. I'm gonna pour Josh a cup of coffee. I'm gonna go ahead and slice him up some cake. We're gonna go sit down and relax. I just wanna thank you for being here as we made all these recipes. I love pushing myself and trying new things because sometimes you never know what your next family favorite or staple recipe will be until you try it. And sometimes you don't even know how easy they're gonna be. Like the pasta we made tonight, so easy with such incredible depth of flavor. So if you enjoyed this and you need a little bit more dinner inspiration, I can pop a couple of my other dinner cooking videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.